The $500,000 figure hit me like a slap. My son, Lester, paced, demanding the money for his latest, brilliant idea, an AI-powered food delivery app. When I cited his track record and refused to liquidate my investments, he launched his final, sharp suggestion. Then sell this old house. You're rattling around in here like a ghost. You could clear $1 million easily, maybe more. I refused, stating, I'm not selling my home, Lester. Disappointment hardened into ugliness. You're too old and stubborn to understand modern business. He slammed the door, leaving me alone with the chill of his cold calculation. I spent the evening in my library, reflecting over a photo album. I watched the image of the eager, loving boy who wanted to be, just like you, transform into the man who saw me as an obstacle and my home as an asset to be liquidated. The change, I realized, began after his marriage, subtly cultivated by Victoria, who focused his ambition solely on money and status. The next morning, the anger was gone, replaced by cold, hard determination. I built an empire through patience and strategic thinking, and it was time to remind my son that his father wasn't a fool. The phone rang a week later. Lester's voice was carefully charming. I wanted to apologize for my outburst yesterday. Victoria and I would like to take you to dinner tonight. Bella Vista, your favorite. We need to talk. I accepted. I knew this was his calculated attempt at manipulation, the apology followed by a renewal of the financial demand. The restaurant was elegant, the perfect backdrop for Lester and Victoria's performance. The dinner proceeded with artificial warmth until Victoria launched the main attack. Eldon, we know you want what's best for Lester. Selling the house is practical. It's too much work for you, and the money would secure your legacy. My legacy isn't secured by money, Victoria, but by character, I stated calmly. And the house isn't for sale. Lester dropped the facade. Dad, this is ridiculous. You're being selfish. You won't live forever, and that money is just sitting there. I looked him straight in the eye. Lester, you're not getting the money. His face twisted with fury. He reached across the table, his hand knocking over my coffee cup, sending a splash of hot liquid onto my shirt. He didn't apologize, he just sneered, "You're too old to answer me," and laughed, waiting for my helplessness. I calmly wiped my face with a napkin, watching his arrogant smirk. I reached into my coat pocket and took out a single folded sheet of paper. I slid it across the white tablecloth towards Lester. "You're right, Lester," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I won't live forever." Which is why I took the time to update my will this morning. Lester stopped laughing. Victoria snatched the paper. Her eyes scanned a brief legal text before she screamed in horror. The document I took out of my pocket was the newly executed amendment to my will, which specified Lester's inheritance was reduced to the minimal legal limit, or symbolic amount, e.g. $1, citing his pattern of financial irresponsibility and emotional manipulation. The bulk of the estate, including the house, was designated to a local foundation or my grandson Tommy, if the previous story is canon, or a trust with specific, strict conditions for disbursement based on financial stability and ethical conduct, conditions Lester could never meet. Lester realized two things instantly. His only future source of $500,000 was gone. His entire future inheritance, the millions he'd been planning on, had been legally and permanently removed from his grasp. He definitely didn't expect that turn of events. Bella Vista's elegance was a calculated stage for Lester and Victoria to execute their final manipulation. They prepared everything, a seating arrangement that isolated me, rehearsed expressions of concern, and a briefcase full of paperwork for Sunset Haven, a nursing home. "We want what's best for you, Dad," Lester patiently explained. "The house is too much responsibility. The money from selling it will ensure you have excellent care for the rest of your life." I pushed the documents back. "I'm not going anywhere." Lester's facade cracked. "I will not allow you to control my life. I will not allow you to control my life," I corrected. "I understand exactly what you're attempting to do." Victoria angled her phone, capturing my instability. Lester grabbed his coffee cup, his eyes wild. "Fine, here's your proof." The hot liquid arced through the air and splashed across my face and chest. Lester slammed the empty cup back onto the saucer. "I just threw coffee on you, and you're too old and weak to even respond. You just sit there like a helpless child." Victoria's delighted laughter cut through the restaurant's shocked silence. "This will be perfect documentation for the medical evaluation, clear evidence of diminished capacity." I reached for my napkin, my movements deliberate. I folded the soiled linen, placed it beside my water glass, and stood, ignoring the stares of the shocked patrons. I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out a single, pristine document. I slid it across the white tablecloth towards Lester. "This $1 million check was meant for your new business venture," I said, my voice clear and carrying across the silent dining room. "I had it prepared after our first conversation, before I understood what you'd become." Lester's arrogance instantly vanished, his eyes fixed on the astronomical figure. "Dad, what are you? But now I see you're not worthy of it." With quiet dignity, I tore the check in half, splitting the $1 million amount. "No. What are you doing?" Lester lunged across the table. I held the two halves beyond his reach, and with a clean final motion, I tore the check crosswise, creating 4 perfect pieces. I scattered the fragments onto the tablecloth. Too late. I brushed a final coffee droplet from my cheek. "You chose your path when you decided I was nothing more than an obstacle to your inheritance." Lester scrambled among the check fragments like a child trying to reassemble a shattered toy. "We can tape it back together." The coffee incident was the catalyst for their final desperate play, a campaign to prove I was unfit to live alone, a form of elder abuse and isolation. 3 weeks later, the campaign was underway. Neighbors expressed concern about my health. Old associates called to ask about memory problems and missed prescriptions, conditions I didn't have. They were systematically dismantling my reputation and capacity to live alone to force me into Sunset Haven and seize control of my assets. But I was prepared. In my jacket pocket, safely tucked away, were the real documents that ensured this evening's lesson was only the beginning of their education. The newly executed amendment to my will already mentioned in the previous response, and something else, a financial instrument that protected my assets from them entirely while I was alive. The document that made Lester scream in horror in the restaurant, or would have if he focused on it instead of the money, was the revised will. However, the long-term checkmate was a sophisticated legal maneuver. I had established an irrevocable living trust, legally transferring ownership of my home, liquid investments, and real estate business holdings into the trust. I appointed my longtime trusted attorney, Tom Brown, as the sole independent trustee. I retained control and income as the current beneficiary. By placing my assets in an irrevocable trust, I no longer owned the assets, the trust did. This meant Lester and Victoria could not force the sale of the house in a guardianship or conservatorship proceeding, as it wasn't technically my asset. Any legal claim of diminished capacity would be irrelevant to the management of my estate, as the independent trustee, Tom Brown, was legally bound to manage the assets according to the trust terms, regardless of my or Lester's health. The coffee incident was public humiliation. The torn $1 million check was a display of lost opportunity. But the irrevocable living trust was the ultimate, unassailable legal weapon that rendered all of their manipulative schemes, the nursing home, the memory campaign, the attempts to prove incompetence, completely futile. Lester's campaign escalated quickly. After the Bella Vista debacle, he moved from a direct financial demand to a systematic attempt to prove my incompetency. Lester and Victoria executed a coordinated strategy designed to build a legal case for guardianship proceedings and force me into Sunset Haven. Community defamation. Lester contacted numerous business associates and friends, including Frank Morrison, feeding them identical, false narratives about my forgetting to pay bills and getting confused about bank statements. This created a public paper trail of community concern. Social media harassment. Victoria opened her digital monument to my supposed incompetence, using Facebook and Instagram to crowdsource my character assassination. She posted about family challenges with an obstinate old man, generating comments urging guardianship. I methodically screenshotted everything, creating a complete evidence file. Bank fraud attempt. Lester directly attempted to access my accounts at Citizens Bank, claiming I was suffering from dementia and he was my caregiver. The attempt failed due to the security protocols I had in place. Official intervention. A social worker, Jennifer Walsh from the Chicago Department of Aging Services, visited me due to the reports of concerns. After a 2-hour assessment, she concluded, Mr. Dean demonstrates excellent cognitive function. No evidence of the reported concerns. Medical validation. Lester's attempt to use a medical evaluation backfired when my physician, Dr. Martinez, confirmed I was physically robust for 72. Cognitively sharp, complete capacity for independent living. Victoria and Lester's failures only made them more dangerous, culminating in Victoria's chilling threat to abandon legal channels and find other ways to make his life impossible. It was time to deploy my defense. As detailed previously, I had already transferred my major assets, house investments, into an irrevocable living trust, appointing my attorney, Tom Brown, as the trustee. This legally protected my estate from any guardianship or incompetency claims, as I no longer owned the assets they were trying to seize. I visited my attorney, Sarah Peterson, and signed a new will completely disinheriting Lester in favor of 3 Chicago charities: the Chicago Children's Education Foundation, the Elder Care Advocacy Group, and the Harold Washington Library Improvement Fund. The comprehensive documentation of their harassment provided justifiable disinheritance. That evening, I called Lester. I want to discuss our future together. All of it. Let's meet tomorrow evening at Bella Vista, 7 o'clock. I want to settle everything between us once and for all. At the restaurant, Lester and Victoria were triumphant, expecting me to surrender. I placed my folder on the table. The first document I removed was a copy of the new will disinheriting Lester. This is impossible. You can't do this to me, he stammered, his voice cracking. I can and I have, I stated. I then produced the second set of documents, the complete evidence file of their harassment campaign, screenshots of Victoria's defamatory social media posts, audio transcripts of their threats, and reports of their failed bank and guardianship attempts. Victoria's face drained of color as she realized they had been meticulously documenting their own crimes. The documents I was now holding proved not my incompetence, but their legal and ethical malpractice. The irrevocable trust had already secured my assets, and the new will had removed their future inheritance. The confrontation was not a negotiation, but a final, unassailable declaration of war's end. We'll challenge this in court, Victoria shrieked. You're clearly not competent to make these decisions. Using what evidence? I smiled, opening the folder's final section. These medical evaluations confirm my complete competency. These social service reports clear me of all concerns. Or perhaps these bank security records show Lester's failed attempts at financial fraud. Each document landed on the table like a nail in their coffin. Professional assessments, audio transcripts of threats, and legal analysis of Victoria's libelous social media posts. Lester grabbed the will copy. You're giving everything to strangers instead of your own son. I'm giving my wealth to organizations that help people rather than exploit them, I stated. Organizations that understand the difference between care and manipulation. Victoria's composure completely shattered. This is insane. We were trying to help you. Help usually doesn't involve public humiliation and financial fraud. I gathered the documents. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable, proving their months of harassment had been meticulously documented. Dad, please, we can fix this. I'll change. Victoria will apologize. Lester's bargaining was pathetic. You've already proven what you deserve, I said, standing. Goodbye, Lester. Goodbye, Victoria. I left them amidst the scattered documents, the debris of their demolished dreams, hearing Victoria's hysterical sobbing and Lester's frantic, defeated whispers about lawyers. 3 months later, my life was built on genuine connection and purpose, not obligation or greed. My days were filled with meaningful activities. I became a regular volunteer at the Harold Washington Library, reading to children like Sophie. Their genuine affection became a balm for old wounds. My Tuesday lunch group at Romano's, Frank, Margaret, and others, provided simple conversation and companionship without hidden agendas. Freedom suits me, I corrected them gently. I received thank you notes from the charitable organizations receiving my disinherited wealth, the Education Foundation, the Elder Care Advocacy Group, and the Library Fund. A letter from a young woman whose college tuition was covered validated my decision. This was legacy, not the entitled inheritance my son had demanded. My home, the house Lester wanted to sell, was alive again, filled with friends and neighbors, community connections built on mutual respect rather than blood obligation. My life was defined by no desperate calls from Lester, no threats from Victoria. The toxic connection had been released. The summer evenings stretch ahead, full of quiet pleasures, the kind of contentment that money couldn't buy, but wisdom could create. I had learned that protecting yourself from exploitation sometimes meant accepting the loss of people you'd once treasured. In letting go of the toxic relationship, I found peace and built a life that truly reflected my values. The hardest lesson was over, replaced by the quiet victory of justice emerging naturally from the choices people made. Do you think Lester and Victoria will ever attempt to re-enter your life? And if so, how do you imagine you'd handle it now? If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right. Thank you for watching.